They call it one of the safest, happiest countries on Earth, but that's only half the story. Beneath Iceland's calm, postcard-perfect beauty lies a side the tourist brochures never mention. A place where century-old taboos are broken without hesitation, and modern freedoms blur into pure temptation. Here, volcanic heat doesn't just shape the land, it shapes the people. And what do they do with that freedom? Well, that's the part you're about to discover. Reykjavik on a Friday night is nothing like the quiet, icy paradise you might imagine. By day, the streets are calm, but as darkness falls, well, as much as it can in summer, the city transforms. Locals pour into bars after midnight, not before. Why? Because the real party doesn't start until late and it doesn't end until sunrise. This tradition even has a name, runter, meaning the round. People hop from one bar to another in loops, laughing, singing, and sometimes even dancing in the streets. Strangers become friends, and friends become, well, Reykjavik nights are famous for more than just music. Here's the twist. Alcohol, in its most popular form, wasn't even legal until recently. Beer was banned for over 70 years, and when the law was finally lifted in 1989, Iceland celebrated as if the whole nation had been holding its breath. Today, March 1st, Beer Day, is a national excuse for an even bigger runter. It's nightlife with Viking courage and no closing time. And yet, despite the endless flow of drinks, you won't see the same kind of chaos you'd expect in other party capitals. There's an unspoken code of respect, even at 4 a.m. Perhaps that sense of respect is rooted in another Icelandic quirk, one that shows up in the very way they name themselves. Your last name tells a secret. In most countries, surnames link you to a family tree. In Iceland, it's more like a personal story, one that changes with every generation. Instead of inherited family names, Icelanders use a patronymic or sometimes a matronymic system. Your last name literally tells people who your father or mother is. If your dad is named John and you're his son, your last name becomes Johnson, son of John. If you're his daughter, you'd be John's daughter, daughter of John. That means a family of 4 could all have different last names. In fact, in a phone book, people are listed by first names. It feels intimate, almost old-fashioned, like living in a village where everyone knows everyone. But in a nation this small, just over 380,000 people, there's a catch. That everyone knows everyone feeling can get a little too real, especially when it comes to dating. So real, in fact, that Iceland invented something unique, an app to stop you from accidentally dating your cousin. When your entire country has fewer people than a mid-sized city, the dating pool can feel, well, familiar. Sometimes, honestly, a little too familiar. It's not unheard of in Iceland for 2 people to hit it off, only to later discover they share a grandparent. So that's why locals came up with one of the most oddly practical apps in the world, the Islanding app. By simply bumping phones, you and your date can instantly find out whether you're related. It's part romance saver, part family reunion warning system. And here's the fun twist, it's not all caution and awkwardness. Icelanders joke that the app works both ways. If you are related, it could be a conversation starter or, an instant deal breaker. The app's cheeky slogan pretty much sums it up. Bump the app before you bump in bed. But beyond the humor, the app preserves something deeper. In a society where heritage is treasured, it helps people avoid accidental scandals while still embracing the freedom of a small, close-knit community. And speaking of freedom, Iceland has a fascinatingly contradictory relationship with modesty. On paper, Iceland seems modest. Public nudity and advertising is banned, and the country takes pride in keeping its media imagery respectful. But step into its natural hot springs and you'll see a very different story. True social life often unfolds in steaming pools carved into volcanic landscapes. From city swimming complexes to remote hidden springs, Icelanders have bathed together for centuries, and swimsuits were never really the star of the show. In traditional geothermal pools, showering completely naked before entering isn't just expected, it's a strict rule, no exceptions. Yes, it's about cleanliness, but it's also a cultural throwback to a time when communal bathing wasn't considered scandalous. Unlike in many countries, no one stares, no one whispers, it's simply normal. Stripped of clothes, social status, and pretense, people relax, chat, and connect in ways that feel almost ancient. It's a fascinating paradox. In public media, bodies are carefully covered. In private pools, they're part of the landscape. Maybe that balance, privacy in public, openness in private, is what makes Iceland's social culture so unique. Yet not all of Iceland's rules around pleasure were so relaxed. In fact, one of their strictest bans lasted for decades, and it wasn't about nudity, but something far more common. It's almost impossible to imagine Reykjavik's nightlife without a pint in hand. But for most of the 20th century, beer was strictly off-limits in Iceland. The ban began in 1915 as part of a sweeping prohibition on all alcohol. Over time, wine and spirits were slowly reintroduced, but beer remained on the blacklist, seen as cheap, dangerously drinkable, and easy to abuse. For more than 70 years, if you wanted beer, you had to brew it illegally, smuggle it in, or settle for a mock beer, low-alcohol malt mixed with liquor. By the 1980s, however, the ban had become a joke. Icelanders had traveled abroad, tasted real beer, and wanted it at home. Finally, on March 1, 1989, Parliament lifted the restriction, and the country hasn't looked back. Now, March 1st, Beer Day, is a nationwide celebration. Bars overflow, breweries release special editions, and Reykjavik turns into one massive rundtour. But the story isn't just about beer, it's about freedom. Iceland shed one of its strangest laws, yet held on to some of its deepest traditions, many of which still belong to a world of myth and magic. Beliefs so strong they can literally stop a highway in its tracks. Fairy tales or fantasy novels? In Iceland, it's part of real-life decision-making. The Huldufolk, or hidden people, are said to live in rocks, hills, and lava fields, invisible to human eyes. They aren't just harmless folklore. To many Icelanders, they're neighbors deserving respect. Construction projects have been delayed or even rerouted because locals insisted a certain rock might be an elf's home. In one famous case, a planned highway had to bend around a boulder after weeks of public protests. This isn't some niche belief either. Polls have shown that a surprising number of Icelanders are at least open to the idea, and it's not because they're clinging to the past. For many, it's about protecting nature wrapped in the poetry of legend. If calling a hill elf territory saves it from bulldozers, so be it. Travel here and you'll see boulders left untouched in the middle of fields or roads with mysterious curves that make no engineering sense. Ask a local why, and they might just smile and say the elves live there. And maybe that deep respect for life, seen or unseen, is why Iceland feels so safe. In fact, it's so safe that most police officers here don't even carry guns. Crime is so rare, police don't carry guns. In a world where police sirens are a constant soundtrack, Iceland sounds strangely quiet. Here, crime is so rare that most officers don't even carry firearms. It's not that Iceland is without conflict, it's that violence simply isn't part of daily life. The country has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, with murders often counted in single digits per year. When serious incidents happen, they make national headlines because they're so unusual. Instead of relying on force, Iceland's police focus on community relationships. They're approachable, often seen chatting with locals, taking selfies with tourists, and even posting jokes on their official Instagram. The result? Trust runs deep between citizens and between the public and law enforcement. Of course, part of this peace comes from the country's size and tight-knit culture. When you live in a place where everyone knows someone you know, it's harder to disappear into anonymity and easier to think twice before crossing the line. But don't let the calm fool you. Beneath the peaceful streets is a raw, powerful force that fuels not only the country's energy but also its very survival. A nation that runs on volcano power. Iceland may look frozen on the surface, but deep below it's alive with fire. This is one of the most geologically active places on Earth, sitting right on the crack between two massive tectonic plates. And Icelanders, they've turned that fiery chaos into pure gold, well, pure energy. Nearly 100% of Iceland's electricity comes from renewable sources, with geothermal power leading the charge. That means they literally heat their homes, power their lights, and run entire industries with energy pulled straight from the molten heart of the planet. Even Reykjavik's sidewalks are heated in winter. No shovels are needed thanks to underground hot water pipes fed by volcanic heat. It's not just eco-friendly, it's economic magic. Energy costs are so low that some global companies set up shop here just to take advantage of the cheap green power. Harmony with nature isn't just about technology, it's about respect. The same volcanic forces that keep Iceland warm have also reshaped the land overnight, reminding everyone that here, nature is the true boss. Speaking of power, Iceland doesn't just keep it for itself. In one area of life, the country has taken transparency to the next level, and it might shock you just how open they really are. If you've made it this far, you're clearly as fascinated by Iceland as I am. Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow so I can keep bringing you deep dives into the world's most surprising places. And of course, make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next fact, because trust me, the next one is a game changer. In most countries, talking about your salary is considered rude, almost taboo. In Iceland, it's actually the law that your earnings are public knowledge. This radical transparency is part of the nation's push for equality. Employers are legally required to prove they pay men and women equally for the same work. Salaries aren't whispered about, they're documented, accessible, and designed to keep the playing field fair. It might sound a little uncomfortable, but Icelanders see it as liberating. No hidden pay gaps, no guessing if you're being undervalued, and it works. Year after year, Iceland ranks at or near the top of the world for gender equality. Of course, in a country this small, word travels fast. Combine that with Iceland's first-name culture, remember no family surnames here, and you can imagine how quickly personal details spread. That closeness doesn't just shape the workplace, it even changes how people date. In fact, Iceland has a special tool to make sure romance doesn't get too close for comfort. And yes, it's as uniquely Icelandic as you think. Remember back in Fact 3 when I told you dating in Iceland can come with a family plot twist? Well, here's the full story. In a country with just over 380,000 people, the odds of meeting someone who shares your bloodline aren't small, they're real. That's why Icelanders came up with one of the quirkiest apps on the planet, the Icelandinga app. Here's how it works. You meet someone, sparks fly, and before things get serious, you both open the app, bump your phones, and wait. If it flashes green, you're clear. If it flashes red, congratulations. You just found out you're related. And here's the cheeky part. The app's unofficial slogan is, bump the app before you bump in bed. Some people even joke that finding a distant cousin is just extra Icelandic. But beyond the humor, it's a clever solution to a real challenge in a small, tight-knit nation. It protects tradition, prevents awkward family reunions, and makes dating just a little more adventurous. And speaking of adventure, there's one place in Iceland where romance and danger meet, inside the mouth of a sleeping giant. It sounds like a dare from a fantasy novel, slipping into the warm, mineral-rich waters inside the heart of a volcano. But in Iceland, it's a real adventure you can have at Askja Caldera. Formed by a massive eruption in the 19th century, this remote volcanic crater now cradles Viti, a geothermal lake whose name literally means hell. Its milky blue water is heated from deep underground, hovering between warm and hot depending on the day. Steam swirls above the surface while jagged volcanic cliffs rise around you like the walls of some ancient fortress. Getting here isn't easy. It takes hours of driving through Mars-like lava fields with nothing but black rock and sky in every direction. But when you finally descend into the crater and slip into that surreal steaming water, the world outside disappears. It's part thrill, part meditation, and part I can't believe I'm doing this. And for some, it's the ultimate Icelandic bragging right. But Iceland's extremes aren't just about volcanoes and heat. In fact, there's something missing here, something so common everywhere else in the world that scientists still can't explain why it doesn't exist on this island at all. In most parts of the world, summer nights come with an unwelcome guest, the mosquito. But in Iceland, not a single one. It's not just rare, it's none. Zero. You could camp by a lake in the middle of July and the only buzzing you'll hear is from the wind. Scientists have been scratching their heads over this for years. While theories point to Iceland's unique climate cycles and lack of stagnant water, the truth is no one has fully cracked the mystery. The absence is so complete that many Icelanders don't even realize how lucky they are until they travel abroad and suddenly meet the bloodthirsty swarms the rest of us endure. But here's the twist. While Iceland has no mosquitoes, it has faced its share of other pests. Only these ones weren't insects, they were wearing suits and ties. And when they caused one of the country's biggest crises, Iceland responded in a way that shocked the entire world. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, most countries rushed to bail out their banks. Iceland took a different path, straight to the courtroom. The nation's banking system had collapsed almost overnight, sending shockwaves through Iceland's tiny economy. But instead of letting the men in charge walk away with golden parachutes, Iceland put several top bankers on trial. When they were found guilty of fraud and market manipulation, they didn't just get a fine, they got prison time. It was a bold, almost rebellious move that made headlines around the world. For many Icelanders, it wasn't just justice, it was a statement. No one is above the law, no matter how expensive your suit. And while the global financial system mostly went back to business as usual, Iceland's example became a kind of legend, proof that even in the shadow of disaster, a small nation could stand its ground. But Iceland isn't always about confrontation. In summer, it's about something else entirely, living twice as much life in the same number of hours. In most countries, a workday ends when the sun goes down. But in Iceland's summer, the sun doesn't. For weeks on end, the island is bathed in 24 hours of daylight, a phenomenon known as the midnight sun. At first it feels disorienting. You leave work, grab dinner, and realize it's 11 p.m., yet the streets still glow like it's afternoon. Children play outside at midnight. Hikers trek through golden-lit valleys. Festivals keep the music going until dawn, except there is no dawn. Locals call it nature's gift, the ultimate break from the grind. With no darkness to slow you down, you can live twice as much in a single day. Sleep patterns shift, energy levels spike, and life feels bigger. Of course, winter brings the opposite: long nights and barely a whisper of sun. But Icelanders embrace that too, turning darkness into a season of fire-lit coziness. And when those winter nights are at their longest, something magical happens in the sky, something so breathtaking you don't even need to leave your own backyard to witness it. In many countries, seeing the northern lights is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. In Iceland, it can be as simple as stepping outside your front door. From late September to early April, the skies explode with color, shimmering greens, purples, and reds twisting like ribbons across the darkness. This isn't a tourist gimmick. It's a natural light show powered by solar particles colliding with Earth's atmosphere, and Iceland's location near the Arctic Circle makes it one of the best seats in the house. What makes it even more magical is the lack of light pollution. Even Reykjavik's streetlights are designed to point downward, preserving the night sky. In rural areas, the aurora feels close enough to touch, moving silently above frozen fields, glaciers, and steaming hot springs. Locals still stop in their tracks to watch, no matter how many times they've seen it. Because in a country shaped by fire and ice, this is the moment when both forces seem to meet in the heavens. And maybe that's Iceland in a single frame, wild, untamed, and impossibly beautiful. Iceland may be small, but it's a land of giant contradictions, where freedom and tradition dance together, where nature gives and takes in equal measure, and where life feels just a little more intense than anywhere else. If you enjoyed exploring this wilder, stranger side of the land of fire and ice, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and join me for our next journey to another corner of the world, where reality is even stranger than the postcards. And tell me in the comments which Icelandic fact shocked you the most. I'll be watching and maybe even planning the next trip based on your answer.